Hello everyone, this is Mega Man EXE79, and I'll be making a deck profile for Constellars. When I first started Dueling Network, I was a ritual user because I wasn't interested in using a meta deck because I got tired of those. And then when Synchros came out, I was never really interested in them because they require weak tuners, and I was never interested in that either. And then when I saw Exceeds, I waited, and then I found Stellars, which is a deck focused on them. So I was like, yay, I'll try this out. So the whole point of Constellars is to get out your Exceeds, and in order to do that, it would really help if you have double summons. So there are monsters that help with that. If you have Constellar Leonis or Constellar Pollux, with Leonis, if he's on the field, you can summon twice as long as the second normal summon is a Stellar, which is fine because this whole deck is Stellars. And then when you have Pollux, the turn he's summoned, you can normal summon again for a Stellar. I don't think Konami has an official ruling on this, but from what I've read on the forums, you can't use Pollux and Leonis, their effects at the same time, to triple summon or something like that. And I guess that makes sense because otherwise it'd be really broken. So I run 3 of both of them. Next I have Constellar Shet. He's just like Cyber Dragon. If your opponent has monsters and you don't have any monsters, you can special summon him from your hand. But the cool thing about this guy is he's not level 1 really. You can target any Stellar in your graveyard or on your field, and then Shet will copy the level, which is great because you can basically use him to exceed anything you want. The only downside is that you can only use him for a Constellar exceed, which is fine because that just means I can't use 2 of my exceeds. Everything else I can use easily. So I run 3 of him. Next is Constellar Cost. I think he's like the star of my deck because his ability is so great. He can level up or level down any Stellar monster, and he can use his ability twice. And he can use his ability on 2 different monsters. So if you have Leonis or Pollux, and you double summon for cost, then you can use him for any rank 4 or rank 5 exceed, which is really useful. That's what makes the deck a toolbox really, because his level alterations. So I run 3 of him. Next I have Constellar Sheraton. He's level 3, he's basically just a searcher, but if for some reason I don't need to search, he has 1900 defense, which is actually pretty above average, so for early game, so I can use him as a defense if I need it, but I usually just use him for searches. So I run 2 of him. Next I have Constellar Eska, who's another searcher, but 2100 attack, he's a pretty decent fighter, and he's level 5, so that's useful for my rank 5 exceeds, which are some of the best that I have. So I run 2 of him. Next I have Constellar Resha. When he's normal summoned, I can special summon any Constellar from my hand in defense. So usually I use him and get out Eska in order to search, and then I have 2 powerful monsters. Or I can use him to get out Cost, use Cost's ability, and I can have a rank 5 or rank 6 exceed easily. Or I can use him for Antares, and then I can get an instant rank 6. So he's pretty useful, but you have to normal summon him, so I guess I would use Pollux or Leonis to do that. So I run 2 of him. Next I have Constellar Antares. I run 2 of him. When he's normal or special summoned, I can take any Constellar from my graveyard and add him to my hand. So he's useful because if I use him with a double summoner like Pollux, I can basically summon Pollux, tribute him for Antares, and then I can go to my graveyard and take back Pollux to my hand. And I just used a 1-card 2400 monster beat stick. So that's always great. So I run 2 of him. Then I have Constellar Hawa. I don't really use him often, but when he's on the field, not when he's on the field, when he's in my hand, he's actually pretty useful. After I summon him, I can tribute him, and then I can special summon any Constellar from my hand or my graveyard in defense position. So one thing I can usually do is I can summon him and then tribute him to bring out Antares, and using Antares' ability, I can bring Hawa from the graveyard back to my hand. And I can keep cycling this if I need a defense for some reason. Or I can use them to bring out Leonis from a graveyard, and then I can use Leonis to get a second normal summon for something, which is always useful as well. And that's it for my main monster deck. For spells, the main one would be Constellar Super Rebirth. I can take any 2 Constellars from my graveyard and put them back into my hand, but I can't do Battle Phase the turn that I do that. which is fine really because one battle phase missed is not really much of an issue, and I focus on effects anyways, so that's great. I run 2 of those. And then MST, I run 2 of them, and then Monster Reborn, Heavy Storm, because staples are always great in any deck really, not just Tellers. So I run those. Then I have 2 Exceed Bursts. If I have a rank 6 or higher Exceed on the field, I can destroy all set cards the opponent controls. That's not just set spell or traps, it's also like set monsters, so that's really useful. And considering the nature of my Exceeds, I can always bring out rank 6 if I need it in an emergency very easily. So that's actually pretty amazing. So I run 2 of those. For traps, I have Wild Tornado. It can destroy any face-up spell or trap on the field. But the cool thing about this is that if it's destroyed while it's set for some reason, then when it goes to the graveyard, I can choose any face-up card, even if it's a monster card, and destroy it as well. So one thing I do is like, if for some reason my enemy has a really powerful monster in the field and I can't get rid of it for some reason, I can always just MST my own Wild Tornado, and then when Wild Tornado goes to the graveyard, I can get rid of their monster. And because it's a graveyard effect, it's not a chain, so people can't negate it. So it's actually pretty awesome. So I run 2 of those. Next I have 2 Solemn Warnings and Solemn Judgment, because negations help everybody, so I guess it helps to get rid of something strong. So I run those. Next I have 3 7 Tools of the Bandit. People say that's actually pretty ridiculous because you don't need 3. But I run 3 anyway because I hate putting up with negations or what do you call it? Mirror Force, Magic Cylinder, and all those trap cards. I hate putting up with them because they stop my strategies, so I run 3 7 Tools. I usually have enough life points to pay for it anyway. And then I have Defense Draw. People say this is actually a pretty terrible card and you can use something better, but I like Defense Draw because I can stop direct attacks and then it lets me draw. And in a toolbox deck like Constellars, where you can get anything as long as you have the cards for it, drawing is always great because a good hand advantage gives you more options. So I run 2 Defense Draws. They've saved my life before. And then an optional card you can put in would be Guardian of Order. As long as you have 2 or more light monsters, you can special summon it from your hand. And it's 2500 attack, so that's really useful. And basically, because I can always double summon whenever I need to, if Order's in my hand, I can just bring them out, and that's another beat stick. So that's it for my main deck. But if you don't really want Guardian of Order, I guess you could put in a 3rd MST, because that's always useful. Yeah, so for my Exceeds, my rank 6 would be Constellar Patoli's Messier 7. I just call him M7 for short because it's easier to say and type. The cool thing about this guy is that you can Exceed summon him using any Constellar Exceed monster as well, which is Chaos Exceeding. The only other monster I can do this is Utopia, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so any Constellar I have on the field, that's an Exceed. If I use up their materials for their abilities and they have nothing left, I can always just Chaos Exceed them for M7 and then use Exceed Burst in order to get rid of their spell and traps. So that's always a plus. His main ability is that when you detach from him, you can target any monster on the field or in anyone's grave, and you can return it to their hand. So I guess that's useful for bringing back whatever, or taking out a monster from the field if an opponent has one and it's too strong for me to handle. The cool thing about this is that, detaching comes first before you target in the graveyard. So if there's no monster on the field for me to get rid of, I can always detach from M7 and then target the monster I just detached and put it back into my hand. Which is useful because, I mean, I keep M7 out and I use this effect to put a good card into my hand. So that's always a plus. But I can only use it during my turns, so that's just one downside. But that's still great. And 2700, he's my strongest monster in the deck. So I run 3 of him. Next I have Tyrus, Keeper of Genesis. He takes 2 level 5 monsters, and he can't be destroyed while he has materials. No, he can't be destroyed by card effects, sorry, while he has materials. And at the end of the battle phase, if he fought anybody, then I can destroy any card on the field, whether it's a monster or a spell or trap. So that's always useful because I can attack with him and potentially kill off 2 cards that way. So that's always a plus. And detaching doesn't really happen until the end phase, so that's good for keeping him alive. Um, I guess out of all the exceeds, he's my favorite, even though he's not stellar, which is because the ability is just awesome. So I run 2 of him. Next I have number 61, Volcasaurus. He takes 2 level 5 monsters, and his ability is that when you detach, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and inflict damage equal to the original attack of that monster. So that's always really useful if there's a strong monster in the field, and if it's like late in the game and destroying it would kill the opponent. He's really only useful in emergencies though, because I can always use other monsters, like other rank 5 monsters. But one strategy that I like to do is I can use Constellar Rebirth. I can bring back Pollux and Cost. I can use Pollux to double summon Cost, and then use Cost to make both of them level 5, and then I can go for Volcasaurus. Even though I can't do Battle Phase that turn, I can use Volcasaurus' effect, and that's fine because once you use his effect, he can't do a direct attack, which is no problem because I just did a lot of damage anyway. So he's really only for emergency situations. I never use him often, so I guess you can use one if you want, but I used to. Next is Constellar Pleiades. People say he's like the best Exceed in my deck, which makes sense because his ability is so awesome. He takes 2 level 5 light monsters. They don't have to be stellars, so he can be useful in any light deck. And during either player's turn, you can return any card on the field to the owner's hand. So its effect is better than M7 actually. And because it's during either player's turn, so if my opponent normal summons during his turn, and he's about to special summon using that, I can use Pleiades and send it back to the hand, and then they're stumped for that turn. Or during my opponent's end phase, I can get rid of a card on the field if it's dangerous, and then during my turn, the first thing I can do is use the effect again, and get rid of another card. So that's actually pretty amazing. So I run 3 of him, because the ability is just really the most useful thing ever. Next I run 2 Constellar Omega. He's a rank 4, so I don't really use him often. But whenever I detach from him during either player's turn, all my Constellars in the field are immune to spell and trap cards. Which is great because I can, if my opponent has like a lot of spell and traps in the field and I get afraid, I can use Omega and then everyone's immune. Or if my opponent uses Dark Hole during his turn, I can use Omega and everybody's safe. So that's always a plus. So I run 2 of him. But he's only really for emergencies though. Then I have Beehive, which is another emergency Exceed. He's level 4, and he's actually the only Exceed that requires Constellars. Everyone else can be used elsewhere, but this guy is a must for this deck. So when you detach from him, you can power up any Constellar in the field with 1,000 attack points when he battles. So that basically makes any one of my monsters a beat stick. But because of cards like Pleiades or M7, or even because of Tyrus, I never have to put up with strong monsters all that often. So I never really need the 1,000 attack point bonus. So Beehive is really just an emergency situation if for some reason I do need it. So I only run 1 of him. I only run 1 of him, yeah. And then I have Constellar Hyades. He's rank 3, so really the only way I get him out usually is with Constellar Leonis and then Constellar Sheraton, which is great because I get to search at the same time. His ability is that when you detach, you can change all your opponent's monsters to defense mode. I guess it's useful if there's a powerful monster in the field that has a low defense. But I mean, the only reason I really use Hyades is because he's a stellar, I can Chaos Exceed him for M7. Which is great, because it just basically takes weak monsters and powers them up big time. So yeah, that's my Constellars. I like that they really flow together and that you can always use them to basically control your opponent's field. And that's that. Yeah.